the Trump-DeSantis shadow Cold War continues. But this was interesting, Buck. In the last hour, Trump truthed out as follows, and I'm curious what you think about this and how you would analyze it. And this is from Trump, like I said, an hour ago, discussing Ron DeSantis. And let me make sure I get it in front of me to read exactly what he said. Because this is maybe I would say, Buck, the first time that I've seen a hint like this. Tell me if you agree with me. Ron DeSantis is a young man who is not doing well against me in the polls, to put it mildly. I believe that if he decides to run for president, which will only hurt and somewhat divide the Republican Party, he will lose the cherished and massive MAGA vote and never be able to successfully run for office again. If he remains governor, which is what Florida voters assumed, it would be a whole different story. All caps, just saying, but who knows? So when I read this as Trump saying I might pick him as my VP. Do you read it this way, Buck, or how would you analyze, again, this is Trump, a Truth Social tweet he put up in the last hour?
I think that that's perhaps supposed to be the interpretation of it. I think that there is no chance that Ron DeSantis would believe that Donald Trump would really want him to be his VP. I don't see that. I don't see that happen. I could be wrong, and we could see that play out very differently. But Trump's VP pick it's not going to be somebody. I mean, I'll tell you again. This is assuming he wins the primary, which is an assumption and which may very well not happen. So we don't know. But if he's going to be able to pick a VP, it would be somebody who loves Trump a lot. That will be number one thing. Somebody who is very, very loyal to Trump. So I don't know who that is. I think there's some names already out there. It's not going to be Glenn Youngkin. It's not going to be Kemp. It's not going to be someone from a state that they could help deliver, unfortunately. And if any, you can mark this day and we can go back and remember that. I'm just saying what I think is pretty obvious and where this is likely to go. Again, assuming that Trump were to win it. But I don't see DeSantis wanting to be anybody's VP either. I mean, why not just keep being the best governor in the country? That's my sense of it.
I'd be curious to hear what people out there are thinking about it. I think it's probably smart strategically of Trump. Because there are a lot of people listening to us right now that would say they like Trump DeSantis as a ticket. Now, the 11th Amendment, there is a issue that would have to be resolved because under current interpretations, you can't have two candidates from the same state. So if Trump were running as president and Ron DeSantis were running as vice president, presumably DeSantis could never go somewhere else because he's the governor. Trump might have to become a resident of a different state in order to pick DeSantis as his VP. That, to me, would just be messy because that given all the other legal hurdles that are underway, Democrats would do everything they could to say, oh, Trump is not a resident of insert other state here, and they would challenge it legally.
I think this is Trump in his way. This for people who are all in on Trump right now as their candidate. Remember, DeSantis hasn't announced yet. We all know, I mean, it's a little bit of a weird situation because with the resign to run law and with the current Florida legislature in session, we all know why he hasn't announced yet. It's not like there's this is strange that he has. This is the expectation, is that he was going to wait until after the legislative session. That's what everyone who follows Florida politics has been assuming. But with all of this, it means that the people who are all in on Trump at this stage of the primary can say, see, he's even extending an olive branch and he's being reasonable and Ron won't wait his turn. That's how the messaging of this from the Trump side of it, I believe, is supposed to work. It's if Ron was just willing to play ball with Trump, it would all work, and we'd have 12 years of great presidents. I think that's what Trump is going for.
I think that's a good argument by Trump. My big thing on Biden, and you see Biden at the Easter egg roll, he could barely talk to Al Roker and kind of stumbled through his answer about whether or not he said he still intends to run, but he hasn't announced it yet. I mean, granted, I don't think he wants to announce on the Today Show with Al Roker during the Easter egg roll that he's going to be running for re-election. The single biggest weakness that Biden has is his age and his incompetence. So I do think the one thing that Trump most takes away is, and I understand Trump is far more competent. He was at the UFC event down in Miami. I hope some of you saw the videos and the reaction to him. That's his first public appearance since he spoke at Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday night and was in New York City for the arraignment. And the crowd went crazy for him. He was sitting with Kid Rock. He was sitting with Dana White and Mike Tyson. You talk about an iconic quad there. A lot of great stories, I'm sure. Felt like a MAGA Mount Rushmore almost. But what is interesting is Trump at 78, which is what he would be, versus Biden at 82. It does allow Democrats to take age off the table in a way that Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, some of the younger candidates running for the Republican nomination, I think Biden would lose just based on looking so old, right? And I think that would be a real difficulty for Democrats. And I think that's Biden's single biggest weakness is just that he's old, incompetent, has dementia. And if you run someone somewhat younger against him, that really registers with a lot of these independent voters. I can't help but say that it does. And so does DeSantis as the VP help Trump? Yes, I think it's probably the single strongest ticket. But I don't know that DeSantis wants to be VP. And again, I just go back to that complicating factor of them both being from the same state. And I would put the chances of it happening at virtually zero.
Yep.
You agree with that. But I think it's smart of Trump to put out the DeSantis, that he's not. I argue.
I mean,
right after he got arraigned.
Can I just say this?
Yeah.
And even for the most ardent Trump voters, the most ardent Trump voters would have to explain to DeSantis that they should ignore what happened to Trump's last VP.
Yeah.
Which is a tough one. That's a tough one, folks. I'm just going to say. I'm just talking about whether you'd want to take that job right now. I would also point out, and I think this is significant as you analyze the situation. Trump is not loyal to Pence. Would you put it past Trump to tell DeSantis that he was going to pick him and then not pick him? Like, how do you lock in? In other words, how do you lock in and insist that someone stick with a vice president, right? I mean, I'll put that one out to the audience. Do any of you think that there's how would you respond to Clay's question about that one?
I mean, really, if Trump came out and said, Ron, if you don't run, I'll make you my VP. Ron doesn't run, and then Trump picks somebody else as his VP. Would that stun anybody? I mean, that wouldn't stun me. Like, and my point is, how do you contractually lock it in so that the guy is willing to 100% follow through? Because Trump, I'm sure, could find something that DeSantis said or did, deem it disloyal, and say that he's decided that he's not going to make that decision. Right? I mean, that doesn't seem crazy to me at all.
It's a very interesting point you are raising, a question the audience can ponder.
Right? I mean, it just seems like it's a long way till election season. And until you're actually on the ballot, what would lock anybody in to a VP commitment? But I think it's super smart.
Let's just have them have it out and see how it goes. You know, that's really what's going to happen here. This is a little bit like the beginning of the Battle of Sterling in Braveheart. When they go out, to negotiate. You said
Braveheart, I was like, nobody's going to have any idea what the beginning of this is going to be. Yeah.
No, they know exactly. Everyone knows Braveheart. When Mel Gibson rides out
when you said the Battle of Sterling, I was like,
no, yeah, totally. But in Braveheart, he rides out there, and before he goes, he's like, I'm going to pick a fight.
Where are you going? I'm going to pick a fight.
And then he does. That's what this is. They're not really negotiating a ceasefire at this stage of the battle. That's my real sense. That's my analysis of what's happening here. Let them fight it out.
Speaking of Braveheart, Mel Gibson was at UFC 267. Did you see him in the video? Like, Trump walked by, and Mel Gibson gave him a military salute. It was a little bit of a clip that went viral. Some of you may have seen that. I wouldn't have thought of it if you hadn't mentioned the the Braveheart angle. Mel Gibson made some good movies, by the way.
I mean, I think Braveheart's my favorite movie of all time. So there you go.
You know what we're about to watch in the Travis household? Gladiator, which is Laura Travis's favorite movie that's ever been made.
She has excellent taste. That's a top 5, maybe top 3 for me.
It's a great movie, especially coming back from Rome, having been in the Coliseum.